Stop everything and listen carefully. November 6, 1970. Napoleon Hill is 87 years old. He knows he's dying. His body is failing, but his mind is sharp, remarkably sharp. A young journalist who'd been studying Hill's work for years gets a phone call. It's Annie Lou, Hill's wife. She says, "Napoleon wants to talk to you. He says he has things he needs to say before he goes. Can you come today? Bring a tape recorder, no notebook, no formal questions, just let him talk." The journalist arrives within hours. Hill is in bed, weak, but his eyes are clear, focused. He looks at the journalist and says, "I've spent 62 years teaching people about success. I've written books, given thousands of lectures, influenced millions. But there are things I got wrong, things I understand now that I didn't understand then, and I need to say them before I die. Not for my legacy, for the truth." What followed was 90 minutes of the most honest, raw, and profound conversation Hill ever had. No prepared remarks, no trying to sound wise or impressive, just an 87-year-old man, 48 hours from death, telling the truth about what he'd learned, what he'd missed, and what actually matters. That tape was never published during Hill's lifetime. Annie Lou kept it private, saying, "Napoleon wanted honesty, not performance. This wasn't for public consumption." But decades later, the tape was discovered in Hill's archives. And when scholars listened to it, they realized this conversation contained more wisdom than any book Hill ever wrote. Because it wasn't theory, it was truth, stripped of everything except what remains when you know you're about to die. If you stay with me for the next 15 minutes, I'm going to tell you exactly what Napoleon Hill said in that final interview. The confessions, the corrections, the wisdom that only comes from the end of an extraordinary life. Before we go deeper, comment right now, truth over legacy. Because what Hill said 48 hours before death proves that honesty matters more than reputation. Hit like, subscribe to the channel, and let's discover what Napoleon Hill said in his last interview. The journalist set up the tape recorder, hit record, and Hill began talking, not slowly or weakly, with urgency, like a man who knows time is running out and has too much to say. His first words were shocking. He said, "I got the title wrong, Think and Grow Rich. It should have been Think and Grow Whole, because I taught people how to get rich, and many of them did. But wealth without wholeness is hollow. I've met plenty of wealthy, miserable people, and I've met poor people who were whole, complete, at peace. I spent 62 years teaching the wrong priority. Wealth is fine, but wholeness is essential, and I should have taught that first." The journalist was stunned. This was Napoleon Hill, author of Think and Grow Rich, saying the title was wrong? Hill continued, "Don't misunderstand me. The principles in the book work. Definiteness of purpose, burning desire, faith, persistence, they all work. But they work to achieve whatever you point them at. And if you point them at wealth without pointing them at wholeness, you'll get wealth and emptiness. I've seen it hundreds of times. People who applied my principles got rich and then asked, 'Now what? Is this all there is?' And I didn't have a good answer, because I taught them how to get rich, not how to be whole." Hill paused, struggling with emotion, then said, "Here's what I understand now that I wish I'd understood at 40. Wholeness means alignment between who you are, what you value, and how you live. Most people are fractured. They value family but give their time to work. They value health but sacrifice it for money. They value truth but live with pretense. That fracture creates misery no amount of wealth can fix. I taught people how to achieve external success. I should have taught them how to create internal alignment first. Because aligned people who achieve wealth experience it as amplification of what they already have. Fractured people who achieve wealth experience it as magnification of what they lack." The journalist asked, "So if you could rewrite Think and Grow Rich, what would you change?" Hill responded immediately, like he'd been thinking about this for years. I'd add a chapter at the beginning called Know What You Actually Want, not what society wants for you, not what your parents programmed into you, not what looks impressive, what you actually want. Because most people spend their entire lives climbing ladders leaned against the wrong walls. They achieve the goal and realize it was never their goal. It was someone else's goal they adopted without questioning. I'd force readers to confront that question first. What do you actually want? Not what should you want. What do you want? Hill continued. And I'd be more direct about relationships. I danced around this in the book, talking about mastermind alliances and sexual transmutation. But here's the plain truth. The people you surround yourself with will either amplify your power or drain it. There's no middle ground. And most people stay in relationships that drain them because they're afraid of being alone, or they feel obligated, or they hope things will change. I wasted decades in relationships that drained me, not because the people were bad, because we were misaligned. And I should have been brave enough to acknowledge that and make different choices sooner. Then Hill said something that hit like a physical blow. I also got the timeline wrong. I taught people that success requires sacrifice now for reward later. Delay gratification. Work hard now so you can enjoy later. But here's what I learned too late. Later might not come. I'm 87. I know dozens of people who followed that advice. They sacrificed relationships, health, and peace for decades, planning to enjoy life after they achieved their goals. And they died before they got there. Heart attacks at 55, cancer at 62, stroke at 68. They never got there later. They spent their entire lives preparing to live and never actually lived. Hill's voice broke slightly. I told people to delay gratification, but I should have taught them to integrate gratification, to build lives where the journey itself is fulfilling, not just the destination, to enjoy today while building tomorrow, to love the people they're with now, not after they achieve their goals. Because death doesn't wait for you to finish your goals. Death comes when it comes. And if you've been delaying life until after success, you might die having never lived. The journalist asked, "Do you have regrets?" Hill was silent for a long moment, then said, "I have one big regret with many small manifestations. I regret choosing achievement over connections so many times. I regret missing my children's childhoods because I was traveling for work. I regret the marriages that failed because I prioritized my mission over my partner. I regret the friendships that faded because I was too busy to maintain them. I regret all the times I chose the impressive thing over the intimate thing, the public legacy over the private relationship, the achievement that others could see over the connection that only we would know." He continued, "Here's what nobody tells you about legacy. When you're dying, you don't think about your books or your achievements or how many people you influenced. You think about specific moments with specific people. A conversation with your son, a laugh with your wife, a quiet evening with a friend. Those are the moments that matter when you're lying here. Not the achievements, the connections. And I sacrificed too many connections for achievements that now feel far less important than I thought they'd be." Then Hill said something profound. "I taught people that thoughts become things. That's true, but incomplete. Thoughts become things when aligned with action. Most people stop at thinking. They read, 'Think and Grow Rich.' They visualize, they affirm, they believe. But they don't do the actual difficult work of building what they want. Thought without action is fantasy. Action without thought is chaos. You need both. And I could have been clearer about that. The book was never meant to replace work. It was meant to focus work, to make effort effective instead of scattered." The journalist asked about the secret Hill mentioned in Think and Grow Rich. The secret mentioned 100 times, but never directly stated. Hill smiled weakly. People spent decades trying to figure out that secret. Some said it was desire. Others said definiteness of purpose. Others said persistence. They're all wrong and right. The secret is simple. Take full responsibility for your life, not partial, full. Stop blaming circumstances, people, luck, or timing. Stop waiting for perfect conditions. Stop making excuses. Just decide what you want and take full responsibility for creating it. That's the secret. It's so simple, people miss it looking for something complicated. Hill continued, but here's what I've learned since writing that. Full responsibility for results must be balanced with full acceptance of what you cannot control. I taught responsibility without teaching acceptance, and that created suffering for people. They took responsibility for things outside their control and tortured themselves when those things didn't work out. The Stoics had this right. Control what you can, accept what you can't. Know the difference. I taught the first part well. I taught the second part poorly. Then Hill said something that redefined everything. People ask me what success actually is. After 62 years of studying and teaching it, here's what I've learned. Success is not achievement. Success is not wealth. Success is not fame or influence or power. Success is this: the ability to live each day aligned with your deepest values while creating value for others. That's it. If you can do that, you're successful regardless of your bank account. If you can't do that, you're unsuccessful regardless of your wealth. The journalist asked, if you could give one piece of advice to someone starting out today, what would it be? Hill didn't hesitate. Stop asking, how do I get rich? Start asking, how do I become valuable? Because valuable people can always generate wealth, but wealthy people who aren't valuable eventually lose everything. Focus on developing skills, knowledge, character, and the ability to solve real problems for real people. Do that, and wealth will come as a byproduct. Chase wealth directly, and you'll either fail or succeed and feel empty. Then Hill addressed something he'd never publicly discussed. I've been asked many times about faith. The chapter on faith in Think and Grow Rich is one of the most important. But people misunderstand it. Faith isn't believing things will work out. Faith is committing to act as if they will, while accepting they might not. Faith is not certainty. Faith is the willingness to move forward despite uncertainty. And that's hard. Much harder than I made it sound in the book. Faith requires daily choice, daily recommitment, daily decision to keep going even when evidence suggests you should quit. That's real faith, and it's a practice, not a feeling. Hill's energy was fading, but he pushed forward. One more thing. I taught people to think big, to have huge goals, definite major purposes that seem impossible. That's good advice, but incomplete. You also need to celebrate small victories, to appreciate progress, to be grateful for today while working toward tomorrow. I was so focused on the big goal that I missed a lot of small, beautiful moments along the way. Don't make that mistake. Have your big goal, but don't let it rob you of today's joy. Both are important. The journalist asked one final question. What do you want people to remember? Hill closed his eyes, took a long breath, then spoke slowly. I want people to remember that I tried to help, that I documented principles that work, but I also want them to remember that I was human. I made mistakes. I got things wrong. My life wasn't as successful as my books made it seem. I struggled. I failed. I hurt people I loved. I missed things that mattered. And I'm telling you this not to diminish what I taught, but to free you from thinking you need to be perfect to be successful. You don't. You need to be honest, committed, and willing to keep learning even when you realize you've been wrong. That's what I tried to do. That's what I hope people remember. The interview ended. Hill was exhausted. The journalist thanked him, packed up the recorder, and left. 48 hours later, Napoleon Hill died peacefully in his sleep, Annie Lou by his side. The tape stayed private for decades, but now we know what Hill said, and it changes everything. Because the final words of a man who spent 62 years teaching success matter more than all the books combined. Why? Because they're true. Not polished, not marketed, just true. Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations knowing he would die. They weren't for publication, they were for truth. Hill's last interview was the same. Truth over legacy, honesty over reputation. And what Hill said in those final hours is this: success without wholeness is empty. Achievement without connection is hollow. Wealth without alignment is meaningless. The principles work, but only if you point them at what actually matters. And what matters is not impressive achievement, it's honest living, aligned values, deep connections, daily gratitude, and the courage to keep learning until your last breath. Comment truth over legacy, like this video so others hear what Hill said when reputation didn't matter anymore. Subscribe because we're teaching the wisdom that only comes from the very end. And share this with someone who needs to hear that success without wholeness is empty. Napoleon Hill taught millions about success. In his final interview, he taught about truth. And truth beats success every single time. Let's go.